Welcome to The Kill File, your favorite true crime podcast. I'm your host, Brittany Spears. Each week, we will explore the dark corners of true crime, unsolved mysteries, and murder. Join me as we uncover secrets, investigate evidence, and dive into the chilling details of some of the most fascinating cases. Get ready for a journey into the dark unknown, because in The Kill File, nothing stays buried forever. Hey guys, welcome to episode 41 of The Kill File. I'm so glad that you guys are back for another case. Before we jump in, just a few reminders. First thing, I am going to be adding some new items to the merch shop and revamping some things. I'm trying to get the cost as low as possible for my listeners. Look, when I started The Kill File, I had no idea, and I still don't, on what I'm doing, and I do everything by myself, and I had to learn how to record, edit, script, research, write, market, everything all by myself. And with that was creating the shop for people to get fun stuff at that lets people know that you're a listener of The Kill File. And some of the shirts are fun and funny. One of my favorite Kill File shirts that I wear is the Fuck Off Steven shirt from the episode about Jesse Valencia being killed by that cop. And people laugh at it all the time. It's so much fun. I have a bright yellow one, and like the website's on the back. It's such a fun conversation starter. I am telling you guys that even older people laugh and smile, especially the husbands. It's hysterical. I have also had people say, I don't know who Steven is, but I'm glad I'm not him. One time I had a nurse tell me that her ex-husband name was Steven, so she really loved it. But they're just fun, and I'm going to be putting out some more. With that said, the prices of the merch, it's not from me. I put myself at the lowest possible amount to make off anything on there, but the prices are from the company who makes the item and then, of course, the shipping. So I'm going to try to go in there and find good quality stuff. Like, I know that there's some Adidas shirts that I can design, etc. And I have to kind of balance this, like, quality versus price because shit's so fucking expensive right now. But I am going to revamp the store here soon and get some more funny quotes on some shirts and ideas, and get what I can out for you guys. Remember, the merch shop can be found on the website, thekillfile.com. Click Shop Merch. Also, thank you to anyone and everyone who posts the social media posts on their own profiles to get the word out there about The Kill File. I am so freaking grateful. If you don't want to share, that's all right. We can still be friends. Just do me a favor and tell one friend about The Kill File, and I will be grateful. Okay, that's it for business. Let's talk about today's case. First off, right off the bat, I want to tell you guys today's case is very twisty and turny and seems to be about one thing but is about another and is just a shocking story. There may be different points where you're wondering why the fuck I am talking about this person or that person, or confused why I'm telling you guys about this, but just hang in there with me because it will be worth it and it will make sense, I promise. Today we are going to talk about the death of a woman named Sharon Marshall. Trigger warnings for today are going to be rape of a minor, child abduction, child molestation, death of a child, talks of incest, pedophilia, and murder. This story is going to begin with a young couple who dates throughout high school and would end up getting married towards the end of high school. Cliff Sevakis and Sandra were high school sweethearts. Cliff was 2 years older than Sandy, but when the pair met, they fell in love, and after they got married, Sandy would soon become pregnant with their daughter, Suzanne. Sometime later, Cliff would be sent off to war and actually wouldn't get to meet his baby girl until she was about 6 months old, when he was able to take a week of leave. He was then returned to Vietnam to finish out his duties. When Cliff came back, he admittedly, on a documentary that I watched and got some of this information from called Girl in the Picture, that when he got back from Vietnam, he was not the same person as before, and he had also learned that Sandra was dating someone else, and the couple would go on to get divorced. Sandra would later on marry a man named Dennis Brandenburg, and the couple would have 3 children together, a daughter named Allison, a daughter named Amy, and a son named Philip. Now, Sandra would find herself a single mother of 4 children and struggling to keep it all together. Apparently, at the time, Sandra was living in a trailer that would, according to her, go through some sort of tornado where the trailer would be flipped onto its side. Sandra would later say that she didn't know where else to turn and would go into the social services office to find help, because she stated that she believed this is where people were supposed to go when they needed to find resources. On the documentary, Sandra said she remembered a time where she was huddled into the corner of her home, alone, crying, and was kind of losing it, and she thinks that she might have had PTSD from the tornado. There has been some speculation online about how Sandy would have had such bad PTSD from the tornado to the point where she really couldn't take care of her kids anymore. And many people believe there is way more to that story than she is willing to share, but this is all we have. So she decides to turn to social services when she needed help. She said when she told the woman at the office that it wasn't safe for her children at her trailer and didn't know how to take care of them at this point, Sandra said that the social services took all of her children away. When Sandra was upset, she said a woman at the office had told her to go to church and she would feel better. Now, during this time, it was said that social services had actually contacted Cliff, Suzanne's father, the oldest, and had told him that they had the children and that they wanted to adopt the children out together because they were bonded and they didn't want to split them up. So Cliff said that he had the choice to either adopt them all or give them all up. He kind of shadily said he took some time to think about it and was drinking and thought to himself that he was too messed up to take on the children after his time in Vietnam, so he decided to let them be adopted by someone else. Now, some people have been very appalled that he would abandon his daughter, essentially, and while I can completely understand why that is fucked up, because it is, I can also understand that being a veteran from Vietnam, still kind of a young man himself, living at his parents' house and not really having his own shit together, would probably be terrified of taking on all of these children, some of which aren't even his, and raising them on his own. That's a huge ask for anyone, let alone a person in his situation. So yes, it's unfortunate that he didn't get his daughter back, but at the same time, if he knew that he couldn't take care of her and the other children the way that they deserved, then maybe he did what he believed to be best for them and didn't want to fuck them all up himself. One of the times that Sandra had been attending church, or was at least in the church, admittedly she was sitting there crying, and there was a man who came up to her named Brandon Cleo Williams. Sandra would go on to say that Brandon came to Sandra and said settle herself and everything would be all right. He said that he was sent from God to Sandra to essentially be like her savior. He told Sandra that he would marry her and then they would go get her children and he would take care of her and the children. Okay, I have a few quick questions about this because this was a little confusing to me. Like, did he tell her this all in one sitting? That he was sent from God and was going to marry her and take care of them all? Because if so, that would definitely throw up some red flags to me. Like, why would this guy want to take this woman and all 4 of her children on out of the blue? No way. I can be sympathetic to the fact that maybe she just wanted her kids back and there's this man offering to make that happen and take care of them. But I would be so fucking leery of a man offering so much with what in return? Like, what is his angle? Okay, now we are going to switch gears and talk about a woman named Tanya Hughes. On April 25th, 1990, 2 men were driving along in a truck later one evening in Oklahoma City when they would come across an odd-looking scene. Off to the side of the road, there was just like a bunch of debris, and when the men pulled over to investigate what it was and what was going on, they would stumble across the body of a woman. The men called the woman an ambulance, and she was rushed to a nearby hospital where, not long after, the woman's husband named Clarence would show up at the hospital. This is when Clarence would tell the hospital who his wife was, a woman named Tanya Hughes, who worked as a stripper out in Tulsa, and that together the couple had a son named Michael. The hospital would later describe Tanya's husband as an older man, and some of the staff thought that Clarence was kind of weird. So as the doctors are looking over Tanya's body, they would see all kinds of bruising, and many of them looked older, like it didn't come from this evening when she was found on the side of the road. It would be determined that Tanya was unfortunately the victim of an alleged hit and run, and that is why she was in such bad shape. During the time that Tanya was in the hospital, her husband Clarence had called Tanya's best friend at the time, a woman named Karen, and told her that Tanya had been in a hit and run and was in the hospital, but that Karen couldn't come see her because she was in the ICU and couldn't have any visitors. Karen didn't give a fuck what Clarence said. She headed straight up to the hospital, and during that time, Karen said she remembered thinking that it was weird that Tanya hadn't told her that Clarence and her and Michael were going out of town, which normally they would tell each other stuff like that because they were best friends. So Karen gets to the hospital and says that Tanya didn't look very good, and she noticed some scratches on her. On the documentary, a Dr. Charles Ingalls, who had worked in the hospital when Tanya arrived, said that when she arrived, she had come in with what was called a medium to severe closed head injury, meaning that the damage was internal and couldn't be really seen from the outside, but she must have had whatever indications that led them to believe that she had internal stuff going on. He said they put her in the ICU and they did the best they could to help her brain swelling. He also commented that internal swelling aside, she seemed to be in pretty good shape for being involved in a hit and run, and this was sort of a mystery to the doctors. While in the hospital with her friend, Karen would learn from the hospital staff that they didn't really think that this was a hit and run, or at least either way they believed foul play to be involved. So Karen would go on to say that her and Tanya had met at a club called Passions in 1989, and they had been friends really quickly because they were the younger girls in the group of dancers. At the time, Karen said that she was in college and that she knew Tanya was extremely smart, that Tanya liked to read all of the time, and the girls became best friends. When Karen met Tanya, she also met Tanya's older husband named Clarence and their 2-year-old son named Michael. Karen would say that Tanya's whole world was her little boy, Michael, and that Karen could tell that Michael just loved his mother so very much. Apparently one time when Karen had told Tanya that they should take Michael to the zoo together and that it would be fun, Tanya was like, oh no, and gave whatever reason. Karen started at some point to realize that it seemed like Tanya wasn't allowed to take Michael alone anywhere, like ever. Then she went on to say that at the club, when the girls would change into their outfits or whatever, they would see each other in various forms of undress, and that once she had noticed bruises on Tanya's whole back. And when she asked what happened to her, Tanya replied that she had slipped and fallen, but Karen knew that that's not what happened. Karen could see that Tanya was in what seemed to be a domestically abusive relationship, and she was worried about her friend. At one point, Tanya told Karen that she felt like things at home were getting worse, and that Clarence had recently taken an insurance policy out on her. Which, you guys, if someone takes an insurance policy, like a life insurance policy, out on you and it's not your idea, fucking run. So even though Tanya had wanted to get away and run from Clarence, Karen said that Clarence always kept Michael under such a close watch and was never away from him, that Tanya didn't feel like she would ever be able to get Michael away from Clarence, and there was no way in hell that she was leaving Michael behind, so Tanya was kind of stuck, which is heartbreaking, and we hear it all the time. Unfortunately, while Tanya was in the ICU for the alleged hit and run, she would die at the young age of 20. The hospital staff had come up to Karen and asked about Michael's situation or condition, and they told her that Michael wasn't talking. Karen thought that this was really unlike Michael, and maybe he was no longer safe, so the hospital gave Karen the information for DHS, which is the Department of Human Services, and thankfully they came and took Michael away from Clarence and placed him into foster care. So, you guys, let me tell you about Michael's foster mother and father. They seem to be just the sweetest couple and seem to absolutely adore Michael. You hear just horror stories about foster parents, so I'm watching this couple speak about Michael, the foster father, a man named Ernest Bean, which just, what a great name that is, seriously, the best. So I'm watching this guy and his wife Merle Bean, and of course in my 2025 eyes and with my own skepticism, I'm looking for signs of them being like awful or pedophiles or whatever is wrong with my brain. But either they're the best actors in the entire world, or they were just the sweet older couple who loved Michael and wanted to help him. So Ernest and Merle, they get Michael on May 1st of 1990, and his mother Tanya had died just the day before the couple got him and got to bring him home. Merle would go on to talk about how Michael was still on a bottle and would only drink Pepsi. When I heard this, I was shocked. Like, what in the actual fuck? Like, I just kept thinking, is Pepsi something else that I don't know? Because you're not telling me that this 2-year-old is on a bottle and only drinks caffeinated soda. What the fuck? So Merle said she knew it was going to be rough at first, but she really wanted to help Michael, who I guess was never told no in his life. And when he was told no, he would just sit there and bang his head on the floor. I've heard this about a lot of people in my life. I don't know why it's a thing. I don't think I did it, so I'm going to talk shit for a second. But what is it with that? Like banging your head on the floor. Now, remember he's only 2, which can be hard enough. But now he's 2 without his mother and is caffeinated with tons of sugar as well. So Merle took the bottle and the Pepsi and she gave him a cup of milk. And after the first rough week, she said that he was a new child. Merle and Ernest would end up having him for 4 years, and the entire time that they had custody over Michael, Clarence never stopped trying to get Michael back. It was said that Clarence was given rights to visit Michael, and it would get to the point where Michael would crawl under the table and hide and say, that mean man, when it was time for his visitations with Michael. Let me just tell you from experience, when your child runs away from their father and does not want to go with them, listen to them. I'm not talking about the type of things where it's like they're having fun and they don't want to leave or interrupt their fun times. I'm talking about when the child legitimately runs away from their parents' car or tells you that someone has hurt them. Believe them, hug them, help them, save them. Just help that child not have to be afraid of anyone who is supposed to love them or take care of them. If you feel like something isn't right about the situation, you're probably right. So after some time, Ernest and Merle were told that they needed to take Michael in for a paternity test, which of course they did. And they would come to find out that Clarence was not the biological father of Michael. What? Yeah, like what the fuck, right? So after this revelation, the courts would terminate Clarence's parental rights over Michael because he was not his father. After his rights were terminated, Merle said she noticed that there was a man driving in a truck by her home, and he was only going like 5 or 10 miles an hour, so pretty slowly, and the man was just staring Merle in the face. This freaked Merle out, which, yeah, that's fucking weird, and she said that she just had this gut feeling about this weird interaction, so she called DHS and asked them for a description of what Clarence looked like and what he drove. Turns out the man drove a truck just like she had seen, and they described a man who looked just like the one who was slowly driving by, staring at her. She, of course, gets nervous and tells DHS she's pretty sure that he's the one who just drove by her home, staring at them. Merle would then say that DHS seemed to think that she was just being paranoid, which made me mad. They didn't believe that this man who had been trying for 4 years to get this child back, who turns out isn't even his, would drive by her home staring her down. Ugh, it's so annoying. Okay, so we are going to now shift gears to Sharon Marshall. I know you're asking yourself why we keep shifting gears, but hang in there, it will make sense soon. Sharon Marshall was a girl attending Forest Park High School in 1984 in Georgia. She was described as being mature, smart, kind, and someone who seemed to care about other people. Sharon had a few close friends, a boy named Lynn Clemens, a girl named Sherry Fortson Bailey, and her best friend, Jenny Fisher. Lynn would say that high school was very hard for him because he was gay and was not only bullied by the jocks, but was often beat up and called homophobic slurs. Ugh, people suck. I'll be your friend, Lynn Clemens. Let's go punch those bullies in the side of the fucking head. Fun fact, I am not going to name drop this person, but when I met one of my very best childhood friends in the 4th grade, I remember one day that this girl was being mean to this other girl who was like standing up against the wall at our elementary school. And I don't remember exactly what was being said or how she was being mean. I just remember whatever it was, I knew that it was one girl that was being really mean to the other and picking on her. And I remember walking up to them and telling the mean girl to fuck off. No, I'm kidding. But I said something about how she needed to stop or, hey, quit doing that or cut it out or whatever I said to break the situation up. I remember the girl being mean was supposedly the other girl's friend, the one that was being picked on or bullied or whatever, but that's not friendship. And I don't know how or why, but I remember from that day on, I became friends with the girl who was being picked on, and she ended up being one of my very best friends. Until I had, like, my oldest son, and you grow up and drift apart, and life moves on, and it happens, but the moral of the story is, if you see something, say something. Anyways, so I guess while Lynn was being bullied and harassed for who he was, Sharon was different, and because of her, he got to have his best high school experience for 2 whole years, because they weren't in the same grade, while she was there being his best friend. Lynn would go on to say that Sharon would write him little notes and leave them for him, and it would make him so happy. And it just made me so happy to see this man sharing his love of a girl who changed things for him like that. I loved it so much. Another friend of Sharon's I mentioned, Sherry Fortson Bailey, talked to the fact that her and Sharon were in the gifted program together and spoke to the fact that when Sharon came to the school, that the boys just kind of stopped in awe because Sharon was beautiful, and she really was. Jenny, who was also Sharon's best friend, said that Sharon was incredibly smart. In fact, she wanted more than anything to be an aerospace engineer and go to school at Georgia Tech. So I guess it was kind of known that Sharon lived with her father, Warren, And Sharon had said that her mother was apparently hit on a bridge when Sharon was in the 2nd grade and was killed. It was also kind of known around her friends group that her father, Warren, was pretty strict and kind of weird. It was said that the one and only time that Sharon's father, Warren, had met Jenny's dad, I guess Sharon had brought him up to Jenny's house to meet her dad, and apparently at the moment that Warren met him, he asked him for a loan, which is fucking weird, and of course her dad said no. And ever since that moment, Jenny's father did not like Sharon's dad. Jenny knew that Sharon's home life was strained and that Jenny was expected to cook dinner every night and wasn't really allowed to talk on the phone. Sharon said that she could call Jenny, but told Jenny not to really call her house so much unless Sharon knew she was going to be calling. Jenny said that when she would be on the phone with Sharon, if Warren came home, then Sharon would get really anxious and say she had to go and hang up very quickly. Finally, the news would come out that Sharon was not only accepted into Georgia Tech, but that she was given a full ride scholarship, and Jenny said that Sharon was basically over the moon. She said Sharon had worked her entire high school life and that all she wanted to do was be an aerospace engineer. Sadly, not long after this, Jenny would get a very sad phone call from Sharon, where Sharon would tell Jenny that she was pregnant. Jenny went on to say that she was shocked and asked Sharon what she was going to do. Sharon said that she was going to have the baby, but then give it up for adoption, but now her dad was no longer allowing her to go to college. Jenny said that she was taken aback and was trying to say, no, you have to go. You got the scholarship, and talked about how smart she was. And Sharon would reply with, quote, "Someone has to take care of daddy." And that was the end of the conversation. Sharon's friend Lynn said that she knew that she was absolutely crushed that she couldn't go to Georgia Tech because it had been her dream and what she was working so hard for all of the time. One day, Jenny gets a call from Sharon telling her that Sharon and her father were leaving in a few days for Arizona. She told Jenny that she was going to have a baby out there and then put the baby up for adoption because her father wasn't going to allow her to keep the baby. Now, you may have been wondering all this time why I've gone on to 3 different stories of 3 different sets of people. Sandra being a single mother of 4, about to marry a man named Brandon Cleo Williams. A woman named Tanya Hughes, who died mysteriously with an abusive husband named Clarence Hughes and their son Michael. And then the story of Sharon Marshall, the high school student, and her father, Warren Marshall. I'm going to tell you why. Brandon, Clarence, and Warren are all the same man. A horrific, monstrous pedophile man named Franklin Delano Floyd. The previous names were all of his aliases, and to top it off, the little girl in the very beginning named Suzanne, who was born from Sandra and Cliff, Tanya Hughes, and Sharon Marshall are also the same person. Let me clear this up for you. After Sandra would go on to marry the man that she knew as Brandon Cleo Williams, aka Frank Floyd, Sandra and Floyd would bring her youngest baby, a boy named Philip, to a family to adopt him, and then they would leave town with the 3 girls. Sandy then would say that Floyd started to do scary things. She said that he would carry around a knife and basically threaten her any time that he thought Sandra wanted to leave. Then, one day, Sandra writes a bad check at a 7-Eleven, and this would end up causing her to go to jail for 30 days. When she got out, she realized, to her horror, that Brandon, aka Floyd, had up and taken off with all 3 girls. When Sandra would go to the police to report the kidnappings, the authorities would say because he was their legal stepfather, that this matter would be now a civil matter, not criminal. They were wrong. It was said that Suzanne's younger sisters, Allison and Amy, were immediately placed into foster care, but that at the time, Floyd kept Suzanne and fled. Floyd would take Suzanne to Georgia, where he would rename her as Sharon Marshall and changed his own name to Warren Marshall. Sharon would essentially be raised by Floyd as her father. When Sharon was in high school and made her friends who thought that her father Warren was strict and weird, they didn't know how right they were. Jenny, if you remember, Sharon's high school best friend, was one time invited to spend the night at Sharon's house. Now, we know that Jenny's parents, but especially her father, absolutely did not like Warren, aka Floyd. But because her father was out of town, Jenny's mother said just this once she would allow her to spend the night, but to never tell her father. While Jenny was at Sharon's house, they were getting changed for bed when Sharon would show Jenny quite a bit of lingerie that she had. When Jenny said that they were absolutely beautiful but asked why she had them, Jenny would say that Sharon told her that Daddy let her have things like that and that she just thought they were pretty and she liked to have them. While this weird conversation was happening, all of a sudden, Warren walked into the room where the girls were changing with a gun pointed at the girls and allegedly screamed, asking what they were doing in there. Jenny said that she grabbed anything around her to cover herself because she was only in her underwear and just kind of stood there in shock. She then said that Warren just laughed to himself like maniacally and said that he would be back. Jenny said she just stood there kind of dumbfounded and scared and looked over at Sharon. And she said that Sharon just smiled and laughed a little and said something like, "Oh, Daddy's just messing around." After the girls quickly got dressed, Warren returned, gun still in hand, and ordered Jenny to lay down on the floor and put a pillow over her head. So she complied. I'm sure she was scared. Then Jenny had to lay there listening to Sharon being raped by Warren at gunpoint. After it was over, the girls didn't speak and they just went to sleep. The next morning, while the girls were in Sharon's room, Jenny would recount that Sharon gave Jenny a big hug and pressed her forehead against her best friend's and said something about how her father was just like that, and then said, quote, "I'm okay. You're okay. Just let it go." Which is so heartbreaking that this sweet young girl has probably been going through this abuse her entire life and had to find a way to cope with it. Breaks my fucking heart. So Jenny said that she never told anyone because she was too scared. Jenny said that this moment changed everything about her own life and seemed to be really a defining moment for her, which, yeah, how could it not? So after Warren, aka Floyd, and Sharon, aka Susan, left Georgia for Sharon to give birth and give the baby up for adoption. Fast forward to Sharon and Warren living in Tampa, Florida, and Sharon is a stripper at this time. So Sharon is now a dancer at a strip club called Mons Venus, which apparently was like a famous strip club. I guess all kinds of famous people would go there because they had like the most beautiful women and the most beautiful lingerie. Heather Lane, one of the dancers from the club, remembers when Sharon started working there and how she looked like a little girl. Heather said that Sharon always wore a lace cover-up and didn't really walk around in the nude like many of the other girls did. Heather would also say that not only did the girls at the club think that Sharon and her father seemed to have a weird relationship, but also said that Sharon didn't really like to talk about her past or open up much about her personal life. It was said that Heather was in charge of setting up some of these parties for like their very rich guests, and during one of the parties that was happening, someone came up to Heather and told her to go get Sharon and take her out of the club. Heather seemed to be a little confused, like why? But I guess what she found out was that Sharon was standing outside of the bathroom area and offering sexual services for $50. When Heather went to talk to Sharon about it, Sharon had said that her father wanted her to go to these parties that were set up, and that it was actually her father who told her to offer the services and had bought the condoms for her to do it. Heather said that she was absolutely disgusted that someone would do that to their own daughter. Heather would then say when Sharon first started, she didn't tell Heather or anyone else that she was pregnant, but it would eventually become apparent. She would go on to say that Sharon was a wonderful mom to her baby boy and that she was always so engaged with Michael. During this time in her life, Sharon would become friends with a beautiful Italian dancer with long black hair named Cheryl. Cheryl apparently wanted to become a model and really wanted to work for Playboy. Heather said that she was a beauty pageant winner, but she was also quite naive. I guess it was known that Cheryl started hanging out with Sharon and her dad, Warren, quite a bit. So a woman named Michelle Couples, who at the time was 15 years old, was Michael's babysitter. She said he was like her buddy and they seemed close. Michelle lived about 1 block from Warren and Sharon's trailer in the same trailer park. Michelle said she remembers thinking it was weird that Michael didn't have, like, a crib. He only had his little pack-and-play. That didn't seem weird to me. I like pack-and-plays. I think they're the shit, and they're safe, so who cares, whatever. I wasn't there. So one night when Michelle was over hanging out, Warren went in to put a VHS tape so that he could record the wrestling match that they were about to watch. And when he put the video in, he accidentally played it, and it showed what was on the tape already. Michelle recalled what she saw on the video was Sharon and Cheryl at the beach topless. And it seemed to Michelle that Warren was probably the person recording it. So when Warren saw this playing, Michelle said that he sort of freaked out and was like, oh shit, you don't need to be watching this or whatever, and said she didn't need to talk about what she had just seen and that it was just some fun or whatever. Michelle stated in her mind, she was just like, is he videotaping his own daughter? I feel like the feeling that Michelle's describing of this moment was very familiar to me, and it gave me like a pit in my stomach. Have you guys ever been in a situation or moment where someone tries to quickly make whatever just happened or whatever you just saw okay? And you know that, like, this was not okay. Like, for example, and this is just a terrible example, but if, like, you saw dad punch his kid in the face, and it would be like the mom who was like, oh, it's fine, it's just no big deal, or, you know, boys are boys, and in your mind you're just, like, horrified. Or you're thinking, like, what the fuck just happened? If you know, you know. It's like gaslighting. This moment on the documentary unlocked a feeling for me, and I did not like it. So, needless to say, after the teenage babysitter, Michelle, saw the video and Warren's reaction, she kind of made a joke saying, like, yeah, she needed to go because it was past her curfew, but she basically just got the fuck out of there. One of the girls from the club had somehow found out about the tape that Michelle was privy to as well, and when Heather found out, she was pissed at Cheryl. When Heather went to confront her about the tape, Cheryl said that Warren said, let me take a video and some pictures of you and I will submit them to Playboy, and then told her she was going to be a star. So the predator that Floyd, aka Warren, preyed on Cheryl knowing that she wanted to be in Playboy. Cheryl then told Heather that Warren tried to have sex with her and that she didn't want to have sex with him and was trying to fight him off. And that's when Cheryl said some kind of switch flipped in Warren and he became violent with her. Heather then told Cheryl that she can't protect Cheryl from them and told her to stay away from Sharon and her father. On another day after this, Cheryl would show up to work bruised and beaten with a black eye and had clear strangulation marks around her neck. Heather went on to say that this is when she knew that Warren wasn't just some sick, twisted pervert, but that he also got physical. She also said that Warren seemed to be obsessed with Cheryl and would call the club all the time, wanting to talk to Cheryl or asking for information about her, like what her last name was or what her father's name was, which I thought was so fucking weird. Heather then recalled one night when she walked out of the club and Cheryl was standing next to Warren's truck, and they were arguing. Heather heard Warren say that he was going to kill Cheryl, and that's when Heather intervened, and Warren, like, revved his engine at Heather in intimidation. I have a neighbor who does this to me and my family all the time, and it just makes me laugh. Like, what are you really gonna do? But also, like, go fuck yourself. Heather said that she then put Cheryl into her own car, and this would be the last time that she ever saw Cheryl. Then, all of a sudden, poof, Sharon and her father Warren took off from Florida without a word to anyone. Everyone around them just kind of assumed it was because of all the talk around the both of them, and maybe Warren knew that the girls were all trying to get Sharon and Cheryl away from him. But again, Heather was able to also attest to the fact that Warren never let Michael out of his sight, and again, Sharon would never leave her son. Michelle Couples, the babysitter, would tell a final tale of her knowledge from Sharon and Warren, who lived in the trailer nearby, saying that before they left, Warren had asked Michelle to keep an eye on their trailer. And one night, they were out front of their own trailer when they see a man in a pickup truck pull up in front of Warren and Sharon's trailer. Michelle said the man got out, went up to the trailer, and about 5 minutes later, he came back out, got in his truck, and drove off. And just a few minutes later, boom, the entire trailer blows and is on fire. Fast forward a little, and now we get to Tanya Hughes, her husband Clarence, and their son Michael, aka Floyd, Suzanne, or Sharon, and Michael, the 2-year-old little boy who had just lost his mother. So right after Merle Bean had seen who she thought was Clarence driving slowly past her house looking her in the face, a shocking event would take place. September 12, 1994, a man would walk into Michael's elementary school in Choctaw, which I guess is about like 20 miles away from Oklahoma City. The man then pulled out a gun from his pocket and told the principal of the school that he was there to get Michael and that he was going to help him. Then Floyd would take Michael and the principal and leave in a truck, the principal's truck. Floyd then stopped somewhere and handcuffed and duct taped the principal to a tree and fled with Michael. The authorities would be called not long after someone would find the principal against the tree. This is when the FBI would be contacted and a man named Joe Fitzpatrick would be assigned to the case. We love Joe. He was great on the documentary, and the things that I have read and heard, Joe is one of the good ones. So, since this was the FBI looking for Michael, many new things would come to light about who they were dealing with and what was going on. Remember, up until this time, the FBI thought Michael's mother was a woman named Tanya, and that a man named Clarence, who was sort of the child's stepfather, had just kidnapped him from school. While a tiny part of that was true, I guess, the authorities were about to find out exactly who Floyd Franklin, aka Clarence, was, and who they were dealing with. So after the death of Tanya Hughes, which we now know as Suzanne, the girls at the club wanted to let Tanya's family, whoever they were, know that she had passed. When they called a woman that they believed to be Tanya's mother, the woman was like, "What the fuck are you talking about? My daughter died like 20 years ago when she was only 18 months old." This was the first time that anyone learned that Tanya Hughes was not the woman's real name. And in fact, the true identity of just who Suzanna Sevakis was wouldn't be found out for another 24 years. Her identity was like the last thing in this story to happen. After the FBI would look into the death of Tanya Hughes, they would see that, I believe it was like the day after Tanya's death, that her supposed husband Clarence tried to cash in on her life insurance policy that he had taken out on her, except the social security number that he used was not for a man named Clarence. It was actually for a man named Franklin Delano Floyd. Floyd was known to have many aliases, including Trenton Davis, Warren Marshall, and Clarence Hughes. So, who was Franklin Delano Floyd? Floyd was born on June 16, 1943. In later interviews, he would go on to say that his father had died when he was younger and that he did have brothers and sisters, but that his mother couldn't take care of them after the death of their father, so she sent them to Georgia Children's Baptist Home. Floyd would allege that he was beaten and tortured there. He would also allege that he was repeatedly raped by the other boys in the house and was molested by the other boys during their bath time. He gave an example, but I don't think it's necessary to know on here, and honestly, I wouldn't doubt it for 1 second if every single part of that was true. We now know how brutal and awful these kinds of places were for kids, especially that long ago. So it's all right to feel sorry for Floyd as a child, but at some point, children grow up and have to take responsibilities for their actions. I just always find it so fascinating to know where fucked up people come from and how they get that way. So Floyd would say that he ran away from the children's home and would then join the army. The FBI would soon find out that not only was Floyd not Michael's father, but that Floyd was actually a fugitive that had been wanted in the state of Georgia since 1973. In 1962, when Floyd was just 18 years old, he would abduct a 4-year-old girl from a bowling alley and was later caught and sentenced to 10 to 20 years for the rape and kidnap of that little girl. Disgusting. In 1963, he attempted to escape prison during a medical appointment and ended up robbing a bank. He was brought back to prison and ended up only serving 10 years from that original charge of the 4-year-old girl's abduction and rape. Why he didn't get more time for the robbery or the escape attempt, or why he didn't serve a full 20 years, obviously he didn't have good behavior, or why he didn't have to serve his full sentence for his sexual crimes against a 4-year-old is fucking beyond me. Way to go, justice system. This is what happens when you let these pricks out before their time is up, or slap them with these tiny sentences for these heinous crimes. They go out and they fucking do it again. After Floyd was released in November of 1972, he was only about 2 months out of jail before he would be arrested again for sexual assault that occurred at a gas station. When a friend of Floyd's from prison posted his bail, Floyd then up and fled and completely missed his hearing in June of 1973 for the assault. He would be on the run from the authorities ever since. After the abduction of Michael, Joe Fitzpatrick, the FBI agent, was told by a behavioral science unit that they predicted that they would only have about a week to find little Michael, and after that, Floyd may get tired of him or see him as a liability, and he would most likely kill him. When Michael went missing, Suzanne's high school best friend, Jenny, if you remember, her mother had seen who she knew was Sharon on the news, but of course the news was calling her Tanya. Jenny's mother saw that the media was covering the death of this woman, Tanya, after an alleged awful hit and run, and now her son Michael had been kidnapped. When Jenny found out from her mother about the news she had seen, she contacted the FBI and was brought in for questioning about Tanya and what her true identity might be. Remember, at the time, everyone seemed to know, including the authorities, that Tanya wasn't her real name, but no one knew for a long time after her death who she really was. So Jenny went in, and as they explained to her that Tanya's husband had kidnapped her son, Jenny kept trying to tell the FBI that Warren was her father, not her husband. And they were like, no, dear, that's actually her husband. Turns out, Floyd and Suzanne had changed their names from Sharon and Warren just 1 year before Suzanne died, and apparently they had taken the names right off 2 headstones. That's why when the girls from the club tried to call who they believed was Tanya's mother, the woman was confused because her daughter had died so long ago. During this time, Joe, the FBI agent, is looking for Michael and Floyd and figured that because Floyd had been on the run for so long that he would be tricky to catch. However, he had an idea. Joe knew that Floyd had a pattern of behavior as far as pedophilia, abduction, and abuse, and thought that he may use these patterns to hide as well. Joe said that he knew Floyd had fled before to Florida, Arizona, Georgia, and Kentucky. So he called all of these different states that he had fled to before, and he put a stop or maybe like a flag on all of his aliases, figuring that Floyd would probably try to renew his driver's license in the new state that he had gone to. Sure as shit, they got a hit from a man in Louisville, Kentucky. If I remember correctly, I think he was trying to use the Sharon Marshall one again. So Joe flew up to Kentucky, and the FBI unit, along with Joe, put an undercover agent from the Louisville FBI unit in a UPS uniform to pretend to deliver Floyd's new driver's license to him at his job. It worked, and they were able to put Floyd into custody. After this, the authorities searched Floyd's home for Michael, and after speaking to a few people who had only been his neighbor now for like 6 weeks, no one had ever seen the little boy, not even Floyd's new employer. When the FBI did some digging, they found out that when Floyd came to Kentucky on a bus, that he had only bought a bus ticket for 1, not for 2. When they asked Floyd where Michael was, Floyd had told them that he had left Michael with some rich person, but that he had hoped the authorities would find him. FBI agent Joe knew that this was probably bullshit and started to think that they would unfortunately probably not find Michael alive at this point. During this time, Ernest and Merle Bean were on the news, tearfully just wanting their little Michael back, and they had been in the process of adopting him when Floyd had abducted him. It was very sad. Although they had Floyd, the assistant district attorneys that were put on the case, they didn't feel like they had enough to charge Floyd with Michael's murder since they didn't have a body. Instead, they were able to charge Floyd with kidnapping, carjacking, and using a firearm during the carjacking, and maybe the abduction as well. So Floyd would be looking at 52 years in prison at this point. Someone on the documentary mentioned that Floyd seemed to have just an empty state about his face, that his look was like very Charles Manson-esque and very scary. So one of the assistant district attorneys said that Floyd seemed to have a huge ego, and also they believed him to be a narcissist, as well as having a sociopathic personality. Floyd tried to be his own attorney because, of course, he did. The narcissistic ones always do, believing that they're smarter and better than everyone around them. During his trial, Jenny, Suzanne's high school best friend, got up to testify against Floyd about the night that she had witnessed him raping Suzanne. Jenny would go on to say that when Floyd got up to cross-examine her, he said something to the tune of like asking her if she drew her opinion about him, like according to what the FBI had told her during questioning. Jenny clapped back with saying that she had actually drawn her own opinion about Floyd when she saw the type of clothes that he forced Suzanne to wear for him, and when she had to hear what he was doing to her. And then Jenny looked straight at Floyd in the face and said, "You were her daddy. You were her father." Hell yes. Then Jenny said something about the defense lawyer like throwing his papers into the air because he knew in that moment they were fucked and there was nothing that he could do. Floyd would be found guilty on all charges and sentenced to 52 years with no chance at parole. This part is awesome. When Floyd was being brought out from the courthouse and escorted to wherever he was going, a camera crew seemed to be in like maybe a parking garage or whatever. And I think that the guy on the news team was asking like where Michael was because still at this point, nobody knew what had happened to him. Floyd was so fucking pissed. It was so funny. He said, and I quote, "Fuck you and Oklahoma, you son of a bitch. Fuck all you motherfucker. Fuck you." End quote. This really made me laugh because not only is this man pissed that all of his plotting and scheming was found out and that he was not as smart as he thought he was, but also because he like messed it up and said motherfucker, not plural, like the real dumbass that he was. And I laughed. It was awesome. So when the FBI had found out that the principal's truck had been stolen, they searched the truck for any evidence that could lead them to Michael or showed what happened to him. And underneath the truck, they would find a bunch of pictures taped to the underside. FBI agent Joe would say that almost every single picture was obscene, and one of the most horrific pictures was the obscene picture of Suzanne when she was very small. Again, they didn't know who she was yet, but at the time, this is when they realized that he had had her since she was little. And since he was in prison when Suzanne would have been born, they realized that he must have kidnapped her and had her for all of those years. Along with the disgusting pictures was a picture of a woman that the authorities didn't recognize, but she was a beautiful young lady that was in various stages of being disrobed and was severely beaten. FBI agent Joe knew that there was no way that this woman was beaten this bad and still alive. So he was brilliant, and he sent the photographs to the states that he knew that Floyd had resided in and asked the authorities there to compare the pictures against any missing person cases that they had. Joe called it a shot in the dark, but lo and behold, someone would get a hit. Apparently, a year before Joe had sent the pictures to the states, a highway crew had found a horribly decomposed human skull and called the authorities. It was said that after about 4 days of digging, the authorities would unearth about 90% of a human skeleton, along with a breast implant, some jewelry, and some clothing. It was clear after the examination that there were 2 bullet holes to the back of the skull, and the skull had also had a broken orbital bone just underneath one of the victim's eyes, and this is how they knew that this was not a natural death, but it was a homicide. Up until Joe sent those photos, the authorities couldn't identify the Jane Doe that they had found. One of the officers recognized one of the shirts that they had dug up with the body was one of the shirts that had been tied into a knot in the photograph. They were then able to identify this woman as Cheryl Comesso, the woman who worked with Sharon at Mons Venus in 1989 and then had disappeared. The same Cheryl who had let Warren take pictures of her for Playboy. This is when the FBI realized that this was probably the reason that Floyd and Suzanne fled the Tampa area so quickly because Floyd had killed Cheryl. They then realized that this is probably the reason that Floyd forced Suzanne to marry him because he knew that the authorities might be on the lookout for a man with his daughter and grandson, but that no one would be looking for a married couple with their son. The FBI would make their way to finding Michelle Couples, the 15-year-old babysitter who used to watch Michael. And when they showed her the picture of Cheryl laying across the mattress, Michelle said she immediately knew that it was the disgusting hide-a-bed couch bed in the living room of Floyd's trailer. And of course, then she said Warren and Sharon's trailer. Michelle went on to say that she was in that trailer 7 days a week looking at that damn mattress because it was always pulled out, and she immediately knew it. Floyd was then charged and found guilty in the murder of Cheryl Comesso and was sentenced to death. Following this, the Jane Doe Network, along with the author of a book about this case, a man named Matt Berbick, was trying their hardest to find out the real identity of Suzanne, who they still didn't know at this time, when Matt would get a random email that had asked him if it would help him if he had the DNA of Sharon, aka Suzanne's daughter. Yeah, mind-blowing. So it turns out like a year before Suzanne was killed, she had given birth to a baby girl in New Orleans and was believed to be basically forced to give her up for adoption. Apparently, a couple had walked into an attorney's office and asked them to find someone to adopt that baby Suzanne was pregnant with, and the woman who had talked to Floyd and Suzanne said that the man was seemingly very controlling and was asking for money for the baby. 6 weeks later, a baby girl, Megan, was born. After Megan was born, her adopted mother, Mary, I believe, asked Suzanne if she wanted to see the baby girl, and Suzanne had replied, "No, I can't." Heartbreaking. Oh, God. So Megan's mom was saying that she had wondered why Suzanne couldn't have just told her what was going on when it was just them two in the hospital room, or asked for help, and then said that when Floyd came back into the room, it was completely silent. Poor Suzanne, like after a lifetime of abuse by the man that she probably thought was like her real father, maybe, it doesn't surprise me that she couldn't ask for help. She also probably didn't want to lose Michael. So sad. Megan on the documentary looks exactly like Suzanne. At this time, not only did no one know who Suzanne was yet, whether Michael was alive or not, or where he was, but now Floyd was on death row and everyone knew that they were running out of time. 2 FBI agents named Nate Furr and Scott Lobb decided since Floyd was on death row that they would give it a crack and go talk to him and see if they could get any information out of him. When they first got into his room with Floyd, it was said that Floyd went on this long-ass rant thinking that these 2 guys were his lawyers. When he found out that they were FBI and that they were reopening the Michael Hughes case, I guess Floyd said to them, quote, "Well, I would appreciate it if you would close it." What a douche. At some point during that talk, Nate told Floyd that Floyd wanted Michael to be his new Sharon, didn't he? And the agent said that Floyd started crying. Scott said that he took this emotional opportunity because it was like the first time they had ever seen this from him, and sternly asked him a few times, like, "How did you kill him, Floyd?" And after a few times, I guess Floyd said, "Don't you do that." And finally, Scott said he slammed his fist on the table and asked again, like, "How did you kill him, Floyd?" And like a light switch, Floyd stopped crying and immediately said, quote, "I shot him twice in the back of the head to make it real quick." Oh my fucking God. I mean, what a fucking piece of shit. Why couldn't he just leave poor Michael alone and let him live with his foster parents? Ugh, I hate it. But also at this point, they pretty much kind of knew that Michael wasn't alive. It had been such a long time, but for him to just kind of snap a little and say it was mind-blowing. According to the FBI website, Floyd told the agents that he and Michael were driving from Oklahoma City to Dallas, Texas, and that Michael was being a typical 6-year-old. And Floyd felt like Michael was acting out of control and had apparently pushed Floyd over the edge. Floyd told them that he was feeling pressure and ran out of patience. The day that Michael was murdered, someone had called the authorities and said that there was a suspicious man with a little boy near a rest area in Oklahoma, but close to the Texas border, which got me thinking, like, what must he have been doing or acting like for somebody to call, especially back then? About this man being suspicious, when back in that time period it was just like, everything's fine. He must have been doing something that really affected somebody. So this would help match Floyd's story up, and then he would tell the agents that he buried Michael near the last exit of the interstate that was leaving Oklahoma. Oh my God, this makes me so fucking mad. Like, what in the actual fuck? This fucking pervert could have just left Michael at his school. He didn't have to take him. He didn't have to abduct and flee with him. And when Michael is being a typical, probably hyper, 6-year-old, after all the chaos that had just happened, he got basically annoyed with the boy and fucking killed him. Ugh, I hope this guy just had the worst fucking day of his life every single day that he woke up in prison. The FBI's evidence response team and some anthropologists from the University of Oklahoma helped FBI agent Scott Lobb, the one who finally got the confession out of Floyd about Michael. They helped him narrow down the potential search area for Michael's remains. They said after 20 years, there would probably be nothing left of Michael, sadly, that even his bones would have probably been taken or eaten by wild animals. However, the FBI was hopeful that maybe they would get lucky and find the shell casings from the gun, or even the little metal eyelets from Michael's shoes. After 2 days of sifting dirt in an area that was said to be about 2,000 square miles, they were unable to find anything. This just makes me so sad. It must have been really hard to stop searching for him and to step away from that. I feel like I would still want to be out there searching for anything. FBI agent Scott said that Floyd loved to talk about himself and that he had told the agents about how handsome he used to be and that he was a bus driver and that he was so tall and then how great of a bus driver he was. Of course he did, because he was narcissistic. But you guys, for all of my fellow Happy Gilmore fans out there, which, by the way, I cannot fucking wait for the new one this summer, this dude Floyd in this picture that I'm going to post on the Kill File social this week, I'm not kidding you when I tell you that he looks so much like Happy's boss. Oh my God. The guy that takes the nail, you know who I'm talking about, like the guy that takes the nail into his head and who ends up with Shooter's ball on his foot. Holy shit. This dude had the same haircut and everything. You will know exactly what I mean when you see it. It's fucking hysterical. Anyways, while Floyd was loving to talk about himself, FBI agent Scott was shocked when he would just straight up ask Floyd about Suzanne's real identity, and Floyd said exactly who she was. He said that him and Sandy had gotten married and that she had daughters and that Suzanne was born in Livonia, Michigan. Sorry if I butchered that. And he even finally said her real name, Suzanna Sevakis. Sevakis? I don't remember what I said before. Sorry. After the FBI got her real name, they went to Sandy's house because Sandy and Cliff were both still alive. I'm not sure if they still are, but when Sandy opened the door, the FBI agent showed her a picture of Floyd with Suzanne, and Sandy said that that was her daughter and asked if they knew where she was. Poor woman had to learn of her daughter's passing. Sandy said that she felt heartbroken that she didn't protect her daughter from the monster that Floyd was. But I'm going to say this, and it is not to shame her, but there's a lot of people out there, including some of the people that were involved in this story, that are pissed at Sandy and Cliff for not trying harder for their daughter. I think especially Sandy, though, because it seemed as though she had maybe given up on searching for Suzanne, or maybe people thought she didn't try hard enough to find her. I don't know how I feel about it, but I will say that the lady seems a little shady. And when Megan's mother, Mary, reached out to Sandy to see if she would like to get to know or meet her granddaughter, Megan, Sandy refused, which led Mary to think, like, what kind of a person wouldn't want to know their granddaughter? Mary said that Sandy seemed to have a, like, couldn't be bothered or, like, couldn't care less attitude, which just bothered her. It made me think that maybe Sandy is feeling some type of way about her mistakes and is kind of putting herself first, maybe because it's too painful for her or whatever. Like, if you don't see it, you don't think about it. I know people like this, and it's just like, it's going to eat you up inside. Like, you have to face your demons. If you don't, you can never be all the way, in my opinion, mentally healthy. And you have to learn to love yourself and others. And how can you do that if you actually hate yourself, but you just don't want to look at it? I don't know. Anyways, I feel like she shouldn't be doing what's best for her, but she should be putting Megan first. And also to help Megan, like, know who her mother was, where she came from, but whatever. Cliff, on the other hand, remains close to Megan, who is now a mother herself, and she named her son Michael after her brother, who didn't really get a chance to live out his life. Very sweet. It was said that the author Matt Burbick wanted to replace the headstone on Suzanne's grave that just said Tanya, with no last name, because no one really knew who she was. They wanted to put her real identity, and he reached out to Megan to ask for her input, which really seemed to touch Megan. They had a small little revealing of her headstone on June 3rd, 2017, and Lynn was there, the boy from high school, and Joe the FBI agent, and Matt the author, and Megan and Cliff, and a little group of people who were all connected in this strange way by Suzanne. Somewhere down the line, Suzanne's brother Philip was tested with DNA and found out his true identity after being raised by his adopted parents, Mary, and her husband, Bob, and that after his father died, Mary told Steve, aka Philip, his real last name. And this is when he reached out to Matt, the author, who got him in touch with the FBI agent, Scott. Megan says that she feels that Suzanne went through what she did with such poise, which she did. And as far as anyone knows, she remains in contact with her grandfather Cliff and her uncle Steve to this day. Franklin Delano Floyd died in prison from natural causes, which is a bummer, at the age of 79 on January 23rd, 2023, without ever having been charged with the murder of Suzanne, although it is widely assumed that he is the one who killed her. And that, my friends, is the harrowing story of the death of Sharon Marshall, a.k.a. Tanya Hughes, a.k.a. Suzanna Sevakis. Oh my God, what a fucking story, right? Like, where do you even begin to process it? I want to say that I totally agree with Megan that Suzanne was just so poised, and it actually blew my mind that Suzanne was as loving and sweet and kind that as she was, especially in high school, like showing kindness to other teens all the while going through what she was is just astonishing. Like, I really want to know if Suzanne thought that Floyd was her real father or if she knew that he was like her stepdad who left with her. She wasn't all that old when Floyd abducted her. I want to say maybe like 4 or 6. I can't imagine what that girl went through during her lifetime. The abuse, the rape, the confusion on why this pervert was the only person around who quote unquote loved her. That's very confusing for a child. And that's probably why she was so mature for her age, because she had to be. I wonder when she realized that other people's parents didn't do the things to their kids that her daddy, as she called him, did. Oh, my heart. It breaks for her. Here's a great example of a young woman who was heavily abused, but instead of turning out to be a shit human being because of it, she was headed towards being an aerospace engineer. Like, hell yes. And good for her for taking her life into her own hands. I speak from experience when I say that it is easy to let the things from your childhood, the fucked up shit that happens to so many of us, define who you are as a person. But it doesn't seem that Suzanne did. It seemed like she said, fuck this, I'm out of here, and tried her best to just make do with what she had. So in case anyone is wondering, because I was, it was said that none of Suzanne's children were biologically Floyd's. So I guess it was thought that Suzanne had like 3 children. The child from high school that she allegedly adopted out, Michael, and then Megan. But to me, the timeline didn't really match up. It wasn't in every source. So to me, if she had given birth to Michael, who was 2 at the time of her death, and she was only 20, that means that she would have been pregnant around the end of high school. So I'm not sure if that information's accurate about the 3 kids. That's why I didn't note it. But supposedly Megan and Michael were both not his. It was actually Matt, the author's blog, who had said that Megan wasn't Floyd's, but a different source had said that everybody just assumed that she was, which I did too. That was immediately what I thought is that Floyd's daughter? I'm going to listen to Matt, though, and believe him because he seems to be very close with the family and the people involved. Anyways, I know this story was twisty and turny and kind of heartbreaking, but God, I thought it was just such a good story and that Suzanne and Michael deserved to have their stories told. And I'm just so sorry that both of them were taken way too early from this world. Suzanne just seemed like the most beautiful soul. I hope you guys will come on back next week when we will cover another episode here on The Kill File. Stay safe, you guys. Bye. Well, that's it for today, you guys. Thanks so much for hanging out with me and listening to another episode of The Kill File. Don't forget to check out the merch shop, either at thekillfile.com and click Shop Merch, or you can visit thekillfile.printify.me/products for some awesome true crime merch. Also, follow along on the Kill File's socials for posts about episodes, pictures about the cases, for updates, and more. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and X as The Kill File, and we are on YouTube and TikTok as The Kill File Podcast. Also, feel free to check out the website at thekillfile.com, where you can learn more about me, your host. You can learn a little bit more about how The Kill File got started, and you can suggest a case right there on the website. Let me know in your case suggestion if you want me to shout out your name if I cover your case. There is contact info on the site as well. You guys have no idea how much I love to hear from you. It makes my whole day. Come back on Mondays wherever you get your podcast fix when we will cover another case on The Kill File, where nothing stays buried forever. Stay safe, you guys. Bye.